Here in just a moment in chapter 7. We talked a little bit about this on Sunday. Didn't get very far, and may not get very far tonight either, for that matter. Lots of little, what I'm call them snippets. They're small thoughts, though there are threads, right? You can kind of see, why does he say that, and why did he say that after he said that, and you can kind of see that kind of linear thought that happens throughout the text, and yet a lot of these are just small, simple thoughts that are expressed and shared in those texts. And so be mindful of that as we work together through Ecclesiastes 7 this evening here in just a few moments. But before we begin, if you would, let's bow our heads together and share in a word of prayer. Our Father in heaven, thank you for the day you've blessed us with. Thank you for the opportunity to study your word, to appreciate your testimony tonight. We know that your wisdom is vast and that you guide us in every good thing. Just give us a heart that wants to receive your message and to use it in our lives to apply the wisdom that you provide. Strengthen us in our study tonight. Guide us in everything that's good and right. Thank you for Jesus, and it's through His name that we pray. Amen. All right, so how do he start this context here in Ecclesiastes 7? How do he start the conversation? Yeah, good name is better than what? Precious ointment. So a good name, or a good name is better than precious ointment, he said. And then he said that interesting statement, right? A day of death is better than the day of one's birth. And then he kind of defines that, right? He doesn't just leave that as some kind of generic thought, as if there was no reasoning behind him saying that. He goes into this discourse then about it's better to go where? Better to go to the house of mourning than to the house of feasting. And what's the basic reason why? In the house of mourning you can think, you can reflect on life, you can learn, right? The house of mourning is the place for wise people because they realize there's something of value they can gain and learn in that setting. The fool who just goes to feasting all the time, he doesn't learn anything, right? He doesn't gain any benefit from that scenario or that circumstance, and then that creates a challenge and difficulty for them. He even talked about how sorrow is better than laughter, and how the heart can be made better by that. The wise look at the house of mourning. We talked briefly Sunday morning about how it's better to hear a rebuke of the wise than to hear a man or to hear the song of fools, he says in that text. And then add verse 6, that's kind of where we left off. For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of the fool. This also is vanity. Anybody, is that a familiar analogy, picture, the crackling of thorns in a fire under a pot? Can you think of something else that we might? Okay, and that, right? That for a moment, right? And if you've ever burned something that's really dry, but it doesn't have much density to it, and you throw it on the fire, and for a second you're like, "Whoo, what a fire!" And then 2 seconds later you're like, "Where'd my fire go?" Right? It flashes and then it's gone. That's maybe what he's pointing to here, right? Like the crackling of thorns. They may help you get the fire going, but there's no sustaining value there. That's what the fool receives when he just pursues laughter and frivolity and the feasting rather than learning anything from the reflectiveness of one's life. He's just like the crackling of thorns under a fire. It quickly rises up and goes away, and he's left with what? And the theme of the book: vanity, emptiness. The result of it all is the same result that he's been talking about over and over and over again. Vanity is the result of that pursuit.
Goes back to that saying. Would you rather be happy all the time, or would you rather leave in, the feeling of sadness? You'd want to leave in the feeling of sadness because if you, left in that feeling of sadness, you would know what happiness was. But if you, were happy all the time, it'd be worthless because you wouldn't really know what true happiness is. I feel like that's kind of what he's trying to say there.
And it might be. I think really his effort really is to show us this contrast, right? Where is wisdom? Wisdom isn't in all the frivolousness of life. Wisdom is found when one reflects on life. Wisdom's found when one realizes his life is like that, like those thorns, right? It's short, and the wise man will appreciate the guidance that he receives from God. And actually, his happiness and joy will come because of that, right? He'll be able to find real joy and real happiness and real contentment because his connectivity to those things happens through whom? Through God. Not through the fun, not through the frivolity, not through all the things that the foolish ones seek. His connection to real joy and happiness isn't about any of those things, whether in quantity or not. His joy and happiness is based on the wisdom that he's gained through reflecting on what God desires from him. And that seems to be the push here.
I'm connecting it to verse 1 when he talks about the ointment. Because ointment is, again, it's passive. It's good for a while, and it's gone. When you go into the house of sorrow, that's something that's permanent in this life.
Yeah.
And it's definitive, and it's absolute. And it's that absolution we need to reflect on.
Yeah.
You know, what is the purpose? Why am I here?
Yeah, that's the moment where you can actually think about something that doesn't just go away quickly.
And it's just amazing. I mean, I can chase a million scriptures, but about how God will use for inspiration when people write this down, about the extra chaff, the brush that's wasted, what it's thrown onto the fire, and it's useless. And that's used throughout Scripture.
Yeah.
Throughout Scripture. It's good trees cut down, thrown in the fire. And I mean, over and over again, it's a theme that keeps going.
Sure.
And yeah.
And the writer here uses that same thought process. Keep reading with me. Then he says, surely oppression maketh a wise man mad, and a gift destroyeth the heart. And right? And if the wise man doesn't take to heart the things that he learns, he can get caught up in the things that destroy one's heart and thinking. And in some ways, even a wise man's got to be cautious, right? The things that he sees, the oppression that he sees, the word mad probably is what kind? Yeah, crazy mad, right? Not angry mad, but it will drive. And by the way, that's not new to Ecclesiastes. He's been talking about that idea of watching oppression happen, and it drives you crazy because you can't seem to do anything about it, right? And so you see the challenges that come. So better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. How patient are we? Yeah. Not very sometimes. You all have heard me say, I still believe that if McDonald's could figure out a way to just chuck food at you out the window, right, that we would want it that way. We don't even want to slow down at the window. How many of us have stood in front of a microwave and watched popcorn pop inside a bag, right? Thinking staring at it will speed it up. That's how impatient we've become. And so there's a challenge though, right? If we're all about immediate gratification, if we're all about what can I receive in this instant that I'm in this moment, I will miss out on some of the greatest blessings and benefits. It's not the start of something that really has the value. It's the end. I see your hand up.
This whole thing is the fool chases happiness. happiness is a fleeting emotion. And I think what he's talking about, be content.
Yeah.
Learn, the festivity, the feast. That's a happy moment.
Yeah.
It's going to go away because as soon as the food's all gone, the party's all over.
Yeah. Yeah.
They go on to the next one.
Yeah. And I think it does go back to that repeating theme, and that is, and really in some ways it's if you're trying to pursue happiness as if it was some goal to attain, you'll never find it. He said, I looked for it in anything and everything under the sun, and I never did find it. Happiness really comes through patience and appreciating God's good gifts along the way. And that my happiness isn't tied to some moment. It's not tied to a thing. It's not tied to anything of the earth that can be pursued. My joy and happiness is about that contentment that comes first by a relationship with the Father, and then an understanding of how He's the provider of all good things. Yeah.
Especially if there's an instant gratification. We stand and watch that popcorn.
Yeah. Yeah. And as the world becomes increasingly quick at providing all kinds of things, the temptation to lose patience along the path or have no patience along the path is and we could anecdotally illustrate that in a lot of different ways. But I've even read even among preachers some studies and research, for lack of a better term, where even the attention span of the listener has changed, and that technology has changed. And among a lot of preachers, there's a lot of rub about that, about, okay, so do we adapt, or do we force the listener to adapt, right? Which of those two paths do you take? It's interesting conversations, preachers speak. It really doesn't amount to anything at the end of the day. But it's true. People's attention spans aren't nearly as what they once were. Go ahead, Lois.
It's so sad that a lot of our kids are being taught that, get that, what makes you happy, and, and follow it. And if that's not what makes you happy, we'll move on to the next thing that'll make you happy. And there's no attention span. There's nothing to work for. It's, I want it and I want it now. And it's so sad because they're never fulfilled. That thing's not going to stick with them. It's the next thing. They're just never fulfilled. And they're never truly happy, and it's terrible.
Yeah, and an appreciation for the contentment and happiness and joy of not just the instant of beginning something, but actually finishing. How many times has somebody started, right? 1 billion great projects have been started. Few have been completed. And he's telling us, listen, better is the end than the beginning. That's also tied to his statement earlier, right? Better is one's death than his birth. But a patient spirit is better than a proud spirit, he says. One that's willing to endure and be patient through the process is better than one that puffs itself up to the point where it believes it deserves, right? I'm worthy of everything that I expect to have. I deserve to have everything that I want. And I think sometimes people convince themselves so much, I deserve happiness by any definition I give it. And this writer says, I tried that, and it didn't work. And he's warning us about that. So be not hasty, verse 9, in thy spirit to be angry, for anger resteth in the bosom of fools. Be patient. Don't get frustrated in the process. Don't get angry with the process. What happens sometimes along the road is we see somebody else and we convince ourselves they have greater joy or happiness than I do, and we tell ourselves they apparently are getting that via earthly means. That bothers me, that they seem to have success and great things happen. And so I decide that, well, maybe I need to give in to that way of thinking as well. Don't become proud. Don't become jealous. Don't let the deceitfulness of all those things, don't let that anger reside in you. That belongs to fools, he said. That belongs to foolish people who let that anger and resentment about things just eat at them like a cancer. And we think that way because we want what the other guy has. And the next thing you know, I'm swallowed up with every ounce of envy and jealousy that I can muster, and have no desire to just simply be content with the blessings that the Lord provides for me. I'll pause for a moment. Go ahead, bro.
I think it's interesting how what he's saying matches up with something that Jesus Christ actually said in another context. I'm not going to quote it, but he said, angry without a cause. He doesn't say you can't get angry.
Right. Yeah.
But it's resteth in the bosom of fools. So if it's resting, like you told, it builds. Yeah, it has to have a purpose. So but don't let it fester.
Yeah, it's not a righteous indignation.
Right.
It's an attitude and a disposition that's slowly working to overwhelm the foolish one.
Yeah, when the money changers, what's he?
Yeah.
He was upset.
He was upset. Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say, like Brian said, when Jesus cleansed the temple, he was angry.
Yeah.
Upset, whatever phrase you want to use, but it was there.
Absolutely.
Looking at verse 8, not only nation, but Jesus, I think you could also put in what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5 in the Beatitudes. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Talking about that, replace and the patient spirit with what Jesus says and the poor in spirit works the same way, and it has the same meaning.
Yeah, they're similar thoughts.
It says better is the end than the beginning. Can't we compare that to the New Testament where at the beginning, yes, we're happy, but we have something to look forward to at the end. Eternal life.
And I think you're right. We can make all kinds of comparisons in relationship to the end is better than the beginning. And as excited as we may be as we start our walk with the Lord, it's the end result that I'm looking for, right?
That goes back to the death and the birth and the death.
Yeah.
That's
Same parallel.
Same parallel.
Yeah, same parallel.
Exactly the same.
Yep. Any other thoughts? I appreciate all that.
Talk about being, what makes you happy. We have a song always saying, I'm happy today. The lyrics, I'm happy today, don't follow up with because of what I've done. No, it follows up with, for he has taken all my sins away. For Jesus, who has taken all of our sins away. So what makes us happy isn't, not what we want, or not what, the world considers makes us happy, but because of what God has done is what's making us
That's
happy.
where the real joy is. Absolutely. All right, old people, I'm sorry, you're about to get hit. Verse 10. So he says, say not thou, what is the cause that the former days were better than these? For thou dost not inquire wisely concerning this.
Back in my day, I tell it to my kids. I mean, I'm 43. I'm a pup. Okay, but I'm
Better
saying
this
that. I'm saying, but yeah, I mean, it's all the same.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
Yeah. And he's brought this point up in some ways before, right? That there's nothing new under the sun. We've had that conversation. But this is interesting because there is a real temptation to always want to look to yesterday and believe it was better. And here's the trick. Let me rephrase that. Here's the hard part about this. We can read Ecclesiastes 7:10, and we can go, yeah, he's right. We really shouldn't be doing all this comparativeness. We really shouldn't be looking back and always thinking about how those were the good old days and how wonderful things were. And yeah, I probably ought not but they were better. But right? That's what we do. That's what we do. We tell ourselves what the writer says, but we don't believe it. We don't believe it. And let me pause 1 minute. I saw your hand, but I'll come back in a second. But he's not saying, by the way, that there may be generational times that were better than other generational times. What he's saying is, it's of no value to you to keep looking back to yesterday and being all overwhelmed about how much better those days were in your mind than the present. That's the I think you could easily argue there are lots of generational moments in God's people where there were better days than others. But the writer's trying to warn us, don't get consumed with that, where you're looking back all the time, saying how much better yesterday was than today is. Go ahead, Bob.
It's not the age that is bad, but the men in it. God is the same now as what he was back then. He's there to help people through hard times, and man uses the ages as an excuse for their own crimes.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think back to the Egyptians. We kind of messed with the meaning of the word better about the Egyptians. The Israelites, after they left Egypt, they're out there going, why'd you bring us out here to die? Didn't we have food enough? Weren't you slaves?
Yeah.
That word better, they just kind of left out the not so much better part.
Their view of what yesterday was like is also could be erroneous in that. I'll come back to something here in a second.
Just as great for our learning, we can look back
Yeah.
and still learn, but we don't have to say this is better because of,
Right.
because that's what we did in the old days.
Right. That's the whole, and that's the whole point of the Old Testament, right? As a schoolmaster, it's there to learn from and to be taught. So again, I agree with you. This text isn't saying you can't. There's no value in looking back or learning something from the past. But read the question again. He says, "Say not thou, what is the cause that the former days were better than these?" He's almost conceding in his argument, by the way, he's conceding that the former days were better. He's conceding the argument. So he's saying the former days were better, but it's a futile vanity, waste of time for me to be just consumed with why. What caused this? What's the reason behind? And then you just spin your wheels, and you spend a lot of time. He says you're not inquiring wisely concerning this. That's not a wise use and value of time, just consumed with the search and pursuit of the cause of why things seem to be better than now. So why is that? What harm can come? So I'm just thinking out loud with you for a minute. So what harm? Why would that writer say that? When he says don't be consumed, right? You're not inquiring wisely if you're always looking back to yesterday, trying to figure out why was yesterday better than today. What challenges or problems does that bring to us when we do that? Good.
And tomorrow comes.
Okay. Never stops, right? You'll be. There's always, if we have a tomorrow, then there will always be a yesterday to be able to look back at.
For him. And yeah, he's the same God today, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But I think this is a mindset of the Jews when Paul went to them. They still wanted the law.
Yeah.
It was part of their mindset. They wanted the law. That's the way we're comfortable. That's the way that things worked out, but then it got so corrupted within that, and they thought they were holding on to past traditions. And so over time, what they thought was the good old days got perverted, and it wasn't what Christ, the ascended Lord, was trying to tell us to do. And that's one of the dangers.
Yeah, it was their version.
Trying to go back under the law instead of grace.
Yeah. Early on, I'm sorry, sir, go ahead.
If you're always looking backwards, you're like the man who put his hands to the plow and looks back. You're not looking forward. Your focus, if it's behind you, then you're not looking where you're going.
Yeah. Jesus taught that principle, right? If a man sets his hand to the plow and looking backward, what kind of row is he going to plow, right? And I can't change yesterday, but I can affect whatever future God grants me. And if I'm looking back over my shoulder and trying to plow ahead into my future, it's not going to go well. And so I think there is some of that warning here, parallel to what Jesus taught, and that principle is part of the reasoning why the author would warn us about this. Why else? I'm just fishing a little bit here with you.
Talked about, being comfortable with the law, not wanting to go back, or wanting to go back to the law. That's where we're comfortable. But then when Paul and Stephen bring out their history, you see, and you just look at the Old Testament, they were comfortable because that's what they've been doing their whole life. But that didn't work out either. You look at their history, and even with the law, with step-by-step instructions of how to do stuff, they still failed at their task.
Yeah.
But they needed to do.
Yeah. So again, there might be a misunderstanding or a falsehood about what yesterday looked like. When you're looking backwards, it's awful hard to appreciate what's in front of you, right? If I'm always looking back, it's kind of hard, and I think we miss out on a lot because our hearts, our minds, our spiritual eye, if you will, our being is living somewhere 20 or 25 years ago, and we can't see what's right in front of me because of it. And I'll take that one step further in our application of this mindset. I think churches can do that. As a body of believers, we can become, number one, we can become, what's the word I'm looking for, but proud of our history to the point that we're not concerned about doing anything in the present or pushing forward into the future. We can become so discouraged because we believe the church was stronger 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and so we become discouraged because our eyes are always on yesterday and not what's presently in front of me. And so I think there's lots of caution about why this is a problem and why when people spend, and I've always pointed to this, to me it illustrates exactly, but remember when they built the second temple and there were people who were there who were old enough to remember the first one, the young people are celebrating we've built the temple, and the old guys they're crying because they remembered what Solomon's temple looked like. And that wasn't good for anybody to have their minds on yesterday so much that they couldn't appreciate what God was doing for them in the moment. Don't become consumed with trying to figure out. And one other thing, by the way, earlier in the text he said, who can make straight what God has made crooked, right? So you're trying to figure out, it's italicized, but I think it's there in the language. He says that we're trying to figure out the cause, and the cause may be out of our reach and scope of understanding. We may not know what God's functions, purposes, plans, things that were in the works. And we're trying to, when we're trying to figure out cause, sometimes we're actually trying to sit in the place of God. There was a man who tried that once. His name was Job. God answered him in a whirlwind. I still can't even fathom what that must have been like.
Who are you?
Yeah. Right? But that's what we're doing. We're not unlike Job when we're not just learning, right? We can learn from the past. Important to learn from the past. We can appreciate what, but when we're looking back trying to figure out, well, why did that happen then, but it doesn't happen now? And why did people behave like this then and they don't do that now? And now we're trying to figure out cause, and that's beyond our scope. Yeah.
About control.
Yeah.
If you're gonna sit and think about what caused that, you're gonna try to fix it.
Right.
Then you're gonna try, well.
As if I'm in a power position to do that. Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts about that text?
There's nothing wrong asking why, but if you let the why consume you, then it's pointless.
Yeah. Yeah. And so long as that why isn't, why did you do that, God? Right? Because that's kind of what Job did, and that didn't go well. At least not for Job. So just be careful that we don't overextend into the past and always think of it as better. And I could spend hours giving you anecdotal thoughts about that, but I'll stop. Verse 11, wisdom is good with an inheritance, and by it there is profit to them that see the sun. For wisdom is a defense, and money is a defense, but the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. So he acknowledges something here. He says, okay, you received a great inheritance. You better hope you get what with it. You better hope wisdom comes alongside of it, because wisdom is good with an inheritance, and by it there is profit to them that see the sun. It will work and can work when wisdom is present. We've made arguments about, not arguments, we've given evidences as to moments where you feel like, okay, that sounds like Solomon. We've seen some other verses where we're like, that doesn't sound like Solomon, right? So we've struggled with that a little bit here and there. But that sounds like him, right? Because that's exactly what he got. Asked for wisdom, God says, yes, and I'm going to do all this other too. Here, if this is Solomon, then here's a guy who knows, right? He knows when you receive such great blessings, you better have some wisdom in order to handle it as the situation comes. And then he makes a comparison in verse 12. He says, wisdom can be a defense, and money can be a defense. But the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. Who can have wisdom? Generically speaking. Anyone. So of the two great defenders, it is the one that everyone has access to. Money, some may have, and I think he's acknowledging a truth here, by the way. He's not giving us a right or wrong aspect of money talks. He's just speaking a truth. How many times have we seen, how many pieces of history would we have to point to go, yeah, money fixed that, and money fixed that, and money, right? How money intervened into a circumstance, and it brought benefit to the person who had it. But wisdom is superior to that, he says. Number one, because the money can run out, and when the money runs out and that's what you were using as a defense, then your defense now has run out. But wisdom can be retained, and it ultimately provides life to them that have it. Wisdom is better than money, even though some might argue they both function at times in similar ways.
I really think that wisdom comes with knowledge and experience.
Yeah. And,
Because I know myself, I've lost before I gained, and I've learned by my mistakes.
yeah. Yeah. Wisdom is a process. And the wisdom that God provides comes through education, study, learning, and all those things are important in building the wisdom that we can then use, that we gain over time and experience.
Talking about before.
Inheritance
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah. I mean, it could be. Yeah. 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 Right. And wisdom comes from that. He's made that point, but the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to that. And so it's not just about what you know, it's about how you use what you know, right? How you use what you know. Knowledge is there, but it's the wisdom of how we use that. Because it's possible to use knowledge for evil, right? It's absolutely possible to use knowledge for evil purposes. Satan had all kinds of knowledge. He knew who Jesus was. He knew Jesus could turn stone into bread. He knew Jesus could jump off a pinnacle of a temple and be caught and ministered to by angels. Right? He knew all those things, but that knowledge wasn't used with wisdom. It was used with evil intent. Knowledge with wisdom brings life. Education with the wisdom to use it brings benefit. And then he keep reading. Consider the work of God, for who can make that straight which he hath made crooked? In the day of prosperity be joyful, but in the day of adversity consider, God also has set the one over against the other, to the end that man should find nothing after him. So, again, I think that the context is the idea of searching out causes, reasons that are beyond our scope. There are things that happen that aren't ours to know and understand. Wisdom will teach me that. Wisdom will help me appreciate that. That some things belong to God. Who can make something straight that God says, nope, I made that crooked and that's the way it's going to stay. Wisdom reminds me. We can have all the pursuits of knowledge and try to understand all the mysteries that we can grapple at. And we can appreciate all the, but at the end of the day, you still are going to be powerless to change anything God has determined to be hit. So in the day of prosperity, be joyful. It's okay. But in the day of adversity, just remember, consider that God also has set the one over against the other. I think earlier in the book he talked about simply that there's a time for everything under the sun, right? There's a time to tear, a time to sow, a time to mourn, a time for laughter, right? He talks about all those things. I don't think he's left that theme completely behind here. He's just reminding us of it. And he says, listen, when things are well, be thankful, find the joy in it, but also remember that there's days of adversity. They both come. We all experience all of these various aspects of what it's like to live life under the sun. God has set both of them in motion, and so in some ways we see this balance, if you will, between those two, as you can experience both of those things in life. So don't be overwhelmed if adversity sets in. That happens to all men. Don't become too excited over the prosperity, because it can it can go away pretty quickly as well. And just learn some contentment in our relationship with God. For all things have I seen in the days of my vanity. There is a just man that perisheth in his righteousness, and there is a wicked man that prolongeth his life in wickedness. It's infuriating, right? But true. That calamity falls upon both. And just because somebody is in one state or condition or the other doesn't mean they won't experience those things. I'll come back to that, Lord willing, on Sunday when we pick up in this text again. I want to come back to that narrative and think about that with you a little bit. And then we'll finish up chapter 7, and we'll do those review questions and then jump into chapter 8, Lord willing, on Sunday.